From trying to get fans to forget the awful Game of Thrones ending, to trying to cash in on the hype and success of House of the Dragon, there are tons of reasons why HBO planned the Hedge Knight prequel. For starters, the series' setting is definitely going to be a hit among fans. The series takes place an entire century before Game of Thrones. According to an official logline given to us by HBO itself, it's going to cover the story of two unlikely heroes as they travel through Westeros and come across a bunch of great things on their adventure. First of all, you've got Sir Duncan the Tall. Joining him is his squire Egg, who's quite small but definitely an important character in his own right. The story takes place after the events of House of the Dragon, but because there are still 100 years before the events of the main series, the Targaryens are still very much in control of the Iron Throne. But of course, this is a time when the dragons held by the family are all a part of history, because, surprise surprise, the events of House of the Dragon will make it so these beasts vanish from the face of the world, though there are still great destinies to be made, and powerful foes to take down, which will make this series quite fun to watch, even if there aren't any giant fire-breathing lizards raining down fire from the skies. Though, you've really got to wonder, just why does HBO want to adapt this story in the first place? After all, it's sort of disconnected from the rest of the shows that fans know about. It's set quite a few years after House of the Dragon, so you likely won't be seeing many familiar faces. And like I said before, there's an entire century before Game of Thrones comes around, and so the series isn't linked to the main show in any major way either. Yet out of all the shows that HBO had in the works, it seems like Dunk and Egg, as it's called among fans, has been given the green light. Some other shows that are going to be releasing include a series focused on Aegon the Conqueror, the very first Targaryen to make his way to Westeros, as well as a Jon Snow sequel that's set after the events of the main show.
But Grey Worm has accepted the justice of a life sentence. Sansa and Arya wanted you freed, but they understand our new king needs to make peace. No one is very happy.
I think the reason why the Hedge Knight has been considered among these others, seemingly more popular and in-demand shows, is because HBO has realized that fans want to learn more about the Targaryen rule. While it may all lead to an incredibly disappointing end, with Dany burning down King's Landing and wasting everything she worked so hard for, there are still literally centuries of histories that the writers can play around with. And what better way to give fans a taste of all that than to showcase a bunch of stories that are seemingly disconnected from the larger picture, allowing them to portray the character and tell their tales in a manner that feels right. And believe it or not, the series isn't something that came out of nowhere. In fact, it's been in the works since all the way back in 2021. After the outright insulting way Game of Thrones ended, HBO decided that they needed to start doing something to revive the franchise. They decided to look into potential spin-off ideas that could serve as the next GOT, and while House of the Dragon was the clear first contender for this, other potential spin-off ideas were floating around at the time. Among these was the Tales of Dunk and Egg, which would be based on the three-part series of novellas written by George R.R. Martin himself. It looks like HBO was working on the series behind the scenes for a while, and it underwent some significant changes internally, which included multiple writers apparently signing up and leaving the project.
Then I wanted the Andal names to be slightly more elaborate than that. And of course the Targaryen, the Valyrian names, I wanted a sense of exoticism about that, so they have a lot of Ys and a lot of...
It seemed grim for the series for a bit of time, especially with how HBO put a bunch of its planned GOT spin-offs on the chopping block recently. But it looks like the Hedge Knight made it through, and now it seems that George will be writing and producing it himself. But of course, he's not alone, because there's also Ryan Condal, Vince Gerardis, and Ira Parker from House of the Dragon there to accompany him, with a team team like that, this series really does feel like it's going to be a real winner. But whether or not the team is able to deliver, or if they're going to be too focused on House of the Dragon, that remains to be seen. That said, despite being in production for a while, you've got to admit the announcement still feels a bit sudden, especially considering there was almost no indication of this show being a thing just a few months ago.
It was a scene that haunted me. The characters seemed so real. I knew right from the beginning, I mean, that first sentence, they find the direwolf pups in the summer snows. I knew they were the summer snows. So this was a place where it snowed.
And most fans thought that any rumors of it coming about were just pipe dreams and speculation. What makes the announcement even more curious is the fact that it seems most of the same team from House of the Dragon is going to carry over to this show, which really makes you wonder just when this series is supposed to come out. Currently, I'm sure Ryan has his hands full with the second season of HOTD, especially after his showrunner, Miguel Sapochnik, called it quits after season 1. So is this really the time for him to be expanding his workload even more? I personally don't think so, though it may just be that this show is super early in the development phase right now, and it may still be years away from release, which is why HBO decided to announce it now and be done with it. Considering the second season of HOTD is set to drop sometime in 2024, the Hedge Knight may be slated for even further down the line, potentially having a release date of 2025 or even later than that. And that makes sense also, because currently there's nothing about the cast for the show. The casting process would probably begin after the team has finalized the initial scripts, and considering that right now, the idea has only really been developed on a surface level, there aren't any actors attached to any of the roles yet. That said, fans have already begun their quest to find the perfect Hedge Knight, with Tim Hopper being the frontrunner for Sir Duncan. While he did already appear as Dickon Tarley in the original series, who's to say Dickon didn't have a look-alike knight running around Westeros 100 years ago? Finally, there's one other detail that's worth mentioning, and that's just how long this series will be. It seems that after Game of Thrones, HBO doesn't really want any kind of shows that go on forever, getting to the point where they overstay their welcome. House of the Dragon is currently planned to be a 4-season-long series, and it seems that the Hedge Knight may be of a similar length, totaling about 3 seasons total, with one dedicated to each of the 3 novellas. It'd be a great way to have each season be its own self-contained story. The first one takes place at a jousting tournament that goes all wrong. The second one could follow Dunk and Egg as they get caught up in a bunch of land conflicts between regional lords and peasants. And finally, you'd have the Mystery Knight. That will have some characters you may remember from Game of Thrones, like Walder Frey and Baron Stark. Martin initially wanted there to be as many as 12 installments in the complete Dunk and Egg storyline. But of course, as busy as he is with the Winds of Winter, it seems that fans are just going to have to wait on that. But that's all the reasons why HBO planned the Hedge Knight series.